My brother's wedding planner phoned. Your family rescinded your invite, but told us to keep the $65,000 deposit you put down. I replied, call off the whole wedding. She gasped. But sir, you're not the bride dash. No, but I own the venue, the catering company, and the hotel chain they reserved for guests. Imagine finding out you've been uninvited to your own brother's wedding, but they still expect you to pay for it. What would you do? Asterisk, because that's exactly what happened to me. And when his bride-to-be tried to kick me out, keep my $65,000, and use my own hotel as the venue, I knew I had a monumental choice to make. It all started subtly, an unsettling feeling I couldn't quite shake. The bridal shower, a huge family event, had happened the previous weekend. My invitation? Non-existent. Then social media feeds started flooding with photos of James, Melissa, and both families at what looked like an engagement photo shoot in a gorgeous botanical garden. Again, I was nowhere to be seen, not even a heads up. It felt like I was being slowly, deliberately erased. The real gut punch came during a routine check-in with my hotel staff about the wedding arrangements. Melissa had requested a meeting to review the seating chart for the reception. Curious, I asked my events coordinator, Victoria, to let me see a copy. My name was nowhere on it. My blood ran cold. There must be a mistake, I insisted, my voice tight. I'm the groom's sister. Victoria looked incredibly uncomfortable. Miss Blake was very specific about the seating arrangements. She personally reviewed each name multiple times. That sinking feeling in my stomach just intensified. The situation escalated dramatically a month before the wedding, when my parents organized a family dinner. This was a big deal. The first time in years both my divorced mother and father would be in the same room, a testament to how significant James's marriage was. We met at an upscale downtown restaurant. James, Melissa, both sets of parents, and me. From the moment we sat down, the tension was palpable. Melissa kept whispering to her mother, Eleanor, shooting these icy glances my way. When wedding details came up, they spoke in vague terms, quickly changing the subject whenever I tried to ask anything specific. Then, during the main course, Eleanor made a comment that sent a chill down my spine. It's so important to have the right atmosphere at a wedding, she drawled, swirling her wine glass. The proper guests, the right connections. A wedding isn't just a celebration. It's a statement about your place in society. Melissa nodded in agreement. Some people simply don't understand the social implications of a high-profile event, she added, looking directly at me. Running hotels is one thing, but appreciating true elegance is quite another. My father, bless his heart, never quite caught social cues. He laughed uncomfortably. Natalie understands elegance just fine. Her hotels are top-rated in the luxury category. Eleanor's smile didn't reach her eyes. Yes, but there's a difference between serving the elite and being one of them. Isn't there? The implication was crystal clear. In their eyes, I was the help, not a social equal. I looked at James, my brother, expecting him to defend me, but he was studying his plate intently, avoiding my gaze. My heart just shattered a little. My mother, sensing my distress, tried to change the subject. Natalie has been so generous with her contribution to the wedding. The venue looks absolutely stunning. Melissa's response was swift and cutting. Yes, the financial arrangement has been helpful, though we've had to make substantial upgrades to bring the space up to standard. I felt as if I'd been slapped. My flagship hotel, the Sapphire Grand, the jewel of my business empire, was being described as substandard by a woman who'd never worked a day in her life. The Sapphire Grand is a 5-star establishment, I said evenly, trying to keep my voice from shaking. We host diplomats, celebrities, and yes, society weddings on a regular basis. Of course you do, dear, Eleanor said, patting my hand condescendingly. And we appreciate your establishment's effort to accommodate our vision. After dinner, I tried to speak with James privately, but Melissa intercepted us. James, darling, we need to discuss the rehearsal dinner with Daddy, she purred, pulling him away. The look she gave me was triumphant, almost smug. Later that week, a disturbing message landed in my inbox from a friend who worked at the country club where Melissa was a member. She'd overheard Melissa laughing with her bridesmaids about the hotel girl who thought she was invited to the wedding. She actually thinks she'll be sitting at the family table, Melissa had reportedly scoffed. As if we would want someone like her front and center in the photos. But we need to keep her happy until the big day since she controls the venue. Another bridesmaid asked, "What about the money she contributed?" $65,000 is a lot to take without including her. Melissa's response chilled me to the bone. That money is already spent. What is she going to do? Ask for it back. Besides, James says she's loaded. She'll get over it. I confronted James that evening. I called him, my hands trembling, and demanded answers. Am I invited to your wedding or not? I asked bluntly. Because from what I'm hearing, Melissa has other ideas. James sighed heavily. Nat, it's complicated. Melissa and her mother have very specific ideas about the guest list. They're concerned about maintaining a certain atmosphere. An atmosphere that doesn't include your only sister? My voice cracked with emotion. The sister who gave you $65,000 toward this wedding? You don't understand the pressure I'm under, James said defensively. Melissa's family moves in important circles. This wedding could open doors for both of us. Since when do you care about important circles? I demanded, my voice rising. What happened to the brother who used to say we only needed each other? People grow up, Natalie. They change. Maybe you should try it sometime instead of holding on to the past. His words were like daggers to my heart. Is that Melissa talking, or you? I asked quietly, my spirit deflating. This conversation isn't productive, he said, his voice cold. I need to go. Melissa and I have an appointment with the florist. As I hung up, a deep sense of loss washed over me. The brother I had known and loved my entire life was slipping away, replaced by someone I barely recognized. Still, I clung to a desperate hope that this was temporary madness, that the real James would return once the wedding stress passed. I decided to make one last attempt. I sent James a heartfelt email, reminding him of all we'd been through, expressing my hurt at being excluded. I assured him I'd still ensure the venue and catering were perfect, regardless of my personal feelings, because that's what family does for each other. His response was brief and formal. Thank you for your understanding. I will speak with Melissa about the guest list situation. Days passed with no further communication. The wedding was now just 1 week away, and I had begun to accept that I might not be attending my own brother's ceremony, despite providing the venue and a substantial financial contribution. Then came the phone call that would change everything. It was a Tuesday afternoon, my phone displaying an unfamiliar number. I was in the middle of a budget meeting with my executive team, but I answered, just in case it was wedding-related. Hello, is this Natalie Warren? A crisp, professional female voice inquired. Yes, speaking, I replied, stepping out of the conference room. This is Victoria Hayes, the wedding planner for the Warren Blake ceremony scheduled at the Sapphire Grand next Saturday. My heart skipped a beat. I'm calling regarding your deposit payment of $65,000. Yes, is there an issue with the payment? I'd processed it myself months ago, but maybe there was some administrative problem. Not exactly, Victoria hesitated. I've been instructed by the family to inform you that your invitation to the wedding has been canceled. However, they would like to retain the deposit you provided. The world seemed to stop. I gripped the hallway wall for support. Excuse me? Victoria cleared her throat uncomfortably. The family has decided to revise the guest list. Your attendance is no longer required. However, they wish to keep the venue and catering arrangements as planned, utilizing the deposit you already paid. Which family? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Who exactly made this decision? Miss Blake and her mother provided the instruction, Victoria replied. I was told that Mr. Warren is aware and has agreed to the arrangement. James had agreed to uninvite me from his wedding, but keep my $65,000. My own brother. The same brother who once gave me half his sandwich every day at school because he knew I was too shy to ask for more food. The brother who held my hand at our grandmother's funeral and promised we would always have each other. May I ask why? I managed, fighting to keep my voice steady. Victoria paused again, clearly uncomfortable. I was informed that your presence might distract from the event's intended atmosphere. Miss Blake felt that family dynamics might create tension on her special day. Family dynamics? I repeated incredulously. I am his sister, his only sibling. Miss Blake also mentioned something about your professional connection to the venue, potentially confusing guests about your role. Victoria sounded like she was reading from a script. She specifically mentioned concerns about you being perceived as staff rather than family, given your ownership of the establishment. The sheer cruelty of that statement knocked the wind out of me. After years of hard work building my business from nothing, my success was being used against me. I was too associated with service industry, work to be worthy of attending my brother's wedding. Did James say this? I asked, needing to know if these were his words or Melissa's. I haven't spoken directly with Mr. Warren about this matter, Victoria admitted. The instruction came from Ms. Blake, but she assured me that Mr. Warren was in agreement. I closed my eyes, trying to process the betrayal and the $65,000 I'd contributed. They expect to keep that money while excluding me from the event. Yes, Victoria confirmed, sounding increasingly uncomfortable. The deposit is considered non-refundable at this point, as stated in the contract. Miss Blake mentioned that you had presented it as a gift, not contingent on your attendance. A wave of pure, cold anger washed over me, clearing away the shock and hurt. This was beyond inconsiderate. It was calculating, cruel, and manipulative. They had used me for my venue, my catering services, and my money, all while planning to exclude me from the actual celebration. Miss Warren, are you still there? Victoria asked after a long silence. Yes, I said, my voice suddenly calm and clear. I want to confirm that I understand correctly. The bride and her mother have decided I am not welcome at my brother's wedding, despite my significant financial contribution and the fact that the event is being held at my property, and my brother has apparently agreed to this arrangement. That is my understanding. Yes, Victoria replied cautiously. I took a deep breath. Victoria, I appreciate you calling me directly. I'm guessing you didn't know that I am the owner of the Sapphire Grand and Elite Catering. There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end of the line. No, I was not aware of that connection. Miss Blake introduced you only as Mr. Warren's sister who had contributed to the wedding fund. I see, I said, a plan already forming in my mind. In that case, I have a message I would like you to deliver to Miss Blake and my brother. Of course, Victoria replied, her professional demeanor slipping as she realized the precarious position she was in. Please tell them that I said to cancel the entire wedding. Victoria gasped. But Miss Warren, you cannot. You are not the bride or groom. You do not have the authority to cancel the event. No, I agreed. But I own the venue, the catering company, and the hotel chain they booked for out-of-town guests. And according to Section 12 of the contract they signed, I reserve the right to cancel any event that violates our company's core values, which include respect and integrity. The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. But the deposits, the guests, everything is arranged. Victoria stammered. Yes, it is unfortunate timing, I said coolly. Please inform Miss Blake and my brother that unless I receive a formal apology and invitation to the wedding by 5 p.m. today, the Sapphire Grand will no longer be available for their event. All deposits will be forfeited as per the cancellation policy they agreed to. This is highly irregular, Victoria protested. I have never encountered such a situation in my career. Neither have I admitted. But then, I have never been uninvited from my brother's wedding while being expected to fund it either. Please deliver my message promptly. I ended the call and leaned against the wall, my heart pounding. Part of me couldn't believe what I'd just done. Another part knew it was long overdue. For too long, I had allowed Melissa and her family to treat me with disrespect while I smiled and accommodated their demands. For too long, I had watched my brother transform into someone I barely recognized. The time for passivity was over. If James wanted to choose Melissa's elitist values over our lifelong bond, that was his right. But he would not do it in my venue, with my money, while excluding me from the celebration. Within minutes, my phone began to ring. It was James. I let it go to voicemail. Then Melissa called. Then Eleanor. I ignored them all, returning to my budget meeting with a serene smile that utterly confused my executive team. Is everything all right? Anthony asked, noticing my changed demeanor. Actually, yes, I replied. I think everything is finally becoming very clear. By 4:30 that afternoon, my office phone, cell phone, and email were flooded. Victoria had apparently delivered my ultimatum, unleashing a storm of panic. The wedding was only 10 days away. Over 200 guests had confirmed. Deposits had been paid to florists, photographers, and entertainers. At precisely 4:55, there was a commotion in the hotel lobby. James had arrived with Melissa and both sets of parents in tow. It was time to face the consequences of my stand. I instructed my assistant to escort the wedding party to my private conference room rather than my office. This was no longer a family matter, but a business dispute, and I wanted the setting to reflect that distinction. When I entered the room 5 minutes later, the tension was palpable. Melissa was red-faced and teary, clutching her mother's hand. Eleanor looked apoplectic, her lips pressed into a thin line. My parents appeared confused and distressed. And James, my beloved brother, looked like a stranger, his face a mask of anger and embarrassment. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" he demanded the moment I closed the door behind me. I remained standing, hands clasped in front of me. "Enforcing the terms of our contract," I replied calmly, and standing up for myself, finally. Melissa's father, Howard Blake, stepped forward. He was a large man, accustomed to intimidating others with his physical presence. "This is outrageous. We have a binding agreement. You cannot simply cancel a wedding with 10 days' notice." I met his gaze steadily. "Actually, I can. Section 12 of the venue contract clearly states that the Sapphire Grand reserves the right to cancel any event that violates our ethical standards or poses a reputational risk to our establishment." "Ethical standards?" Eleanor scoffed. "What nonsense is this? Attempting to exclude the venue owner from an event while retaining her financial contribution constitutes fraud," I stated. "That violates both ethical standards and potentially the law." "We didn't exclude you," Melissa protested, tears streaming down her face. "You simply revised the guest list by removing only me," I pointed out. "After accepting my $65,000 contribution." My mother stepped forward, clearly confused. "Natalie, what is going on? Why would you not be invited to your own brother's wedding?" I looked at James, giving him the opportunity to explain. He avoided my gaze, staring at the carpet. "Perhaps James or Melissa would like to explain their reasoning," I suggested after the silence stretched uncomfortably. "This is a misunderstanding," James finally said, his voice lacking conviction. "Victoria must have confused the instructions." Victoria Hayes, who had been quietly observing from the corner of the room, straightened her spine. "I followed Miss Blake's instructions exactly as they were given to me. I was told to inform Miss Warren that her invitation had been rescinded, but that the deposit would be retained." Eleanor waved her hand dismissively. "This is ridiculous. So there was a miscommunication about the guest list. It happens with large events. That is no reason to threaten the entire wedding." "This was not a miscommunication," I said firmly. "This was a deliberate decision to exclude me while keeping my money. You offered that money as a gift." Melissa snapped, dropping all pretense of civility. "Gifts don't come with conditions." "Actually, they often do," I countered, "especially when the gift is a business transaction with a signed contract." Howard Blake pulled out his cell phone. "This is absurd. I'm calling our attorney right now. We will sue you for breach of contract." "You are welcome to do that," I replied. "But the contract is quite clear about my right to cancel under these circumstances. Additionally, I have documentary evidence of the bride's intent to defraud me by accepting my financial contribution while planning to exclude me from the event." "That is a serious accusation," Howard growled. "Yes, it is," I agreed. "Almost as serious as telling your daughter it's acceptable to take $65,000 from someone and then ban them from the event they funded." My father, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, finally spoke. "James, is this true? Did you agree to exclude your sister from your wedding?" James looked trapped, his eyes darting between Melissa and me. "It's complicated," he muttered. "It's actually quite simple," I said, feeling a strange calm despite the chaos. "Either I am welcome at my brother's wedding as a full and respected family member, or there will be no wedding at the Sapphire Grand." Melissa burst into fresh tears. "You can't do this. Everything is arranged. Our guests are arriving from Europe next week. The custom gown, the flowers, the band that required a 6-month deposit. I understand. It's inconvenient," I acknowledged. "But so is discovering that your only sibling has decided you're not good enough to attend his wedding despite your generous contribution." Eleanor turned to James. "This is ridiculous. Call her bluff. We can find another venue." I smiled thinly. "With 10 days' notice, in the height of wedding season, that seems unlikely, but you are welcome to try. Of course, you would forfeit the deposit here, and most other venues will require full payment up front for such a last-minute booking." The color drained from Melissa's face as she realized the impossibility of the situation. "Daddy, do something." Howard Blake looked thoughtful. "Perhaps we can come to some arrangement. What exactly do you want, Miss Warren?" "Respect," I said simply. "A sincere apology and acknowledgement that what you planned to do was wrong, and a guarantee that I will be treated as the family that I am at this event." "This is extortion," Eleanor hissed. "No," I corrected her. "This is a boundary. I have spent months accommodating every demand, absorbing every slight, and financing a significant portion of this wedding. In return, I have been treated with contempt and ultimately excluded entirely. That ends today. My mother moved to stand beside me, surprising everyone, including myself. I agree with Natalie. What you were planning is shameful, James. I raised you better than this. James finally looked up, his expression a mix of shame and defiance. You don't understand the pressure I've been under. I understand perfectly, I replied. You have been so desperate to impress Melissa and her family that you were willing to betray the sister who has always been there for you. The sister who helped put you through trade school, who celebrated every success, and supported you through every failure. Something in my words seemed to penetrate the fog he had been living in. For the first time in months, I saw a glimmer of the real James in his eyes. I never wanted to hurt you, Nat, he said quietly. Yet you were willing to ban me from your wedding while keeping my money, I pointed out. How did you think that would make me feel? I thought, he hesitated. I thought you would understand that sometimes sacrifices have to be made for the bigger picture. And I was the sacrifice? I asked, my voice breaking slightly despite my resolve to remain composed. James had no answer for that. Howard Blake cleared his throat. Let us be practical about this, Miss Warren. If we agree to include you in the wedding as requested, will you allow the event to proceed as planned? That depends, I said, turning to face James directly. Is that what you want, James? Am I just an obligation to be tolerated, or do you actually want your only sister at your wedding? The room fell silent as everyone waited for James's response. This was the moment of truth, not just for the wedding, but for our relationship going forward. James looked at Melissa, then at me, then down at his hands. I want you there, Nat, he said finally. I always did. I just got caught up in everything. The planning, the expectations, the pressure to make everything perfect. Perfect for whom? I asked softly. He had no answer for that either. Melissa stomped her foot in frustration. This is my wedding. I should decide who attends. It's our wedding, James corrected her, seeming to find his voice at last. And Natalie is my sister. She should be there. She deserves to be there. The look Melissa gave him was venomous. After this stunt, you still want her there? She just threatened to ruin our entire wedding. After you tried to exclude her while keeping her money, James countered, standing a little straighter. Think about that, Melissa. How would you feel if someone did that to you? For perhaps the first time since I had met her, Melissa seemed genuinely speechless. Here is what's going to happen, I said, addressing the entire room. I will allow the wedding to proceed as planned with the following conditions. First, I will receive a formal written apology from the bride and groom for the attempt to exclude me. Second, I will be treated with the respect due to a family member and business owner throughout all wedding events. Third, my $65,000 contribution will be acknowledged in the wedding program as a gift from a loving sister, not simply as a venue discount. Howard Blake nodded thoughtfully. Those terms seem reasonable given the circumstances. Father, Melissa protested. Enough, Melissa, he said firmly. Miss Warren has us over a barrel, and you know it. More importantly, she is right. What you and your mother planned was inappropriate and potentially illegal. We are fortunate she is willing to work with us at all. Eleanor looked as if she had swallowed something sour, but remained silent. My parents exchanged glances, clearly processing the family drama they had walked into. Do we have an agreement? I asked, looking directly at James. After a moment's hesitation, he nodded. Yes. And Nat, I'm sorry. I should have never let things get this far. It was a start, but I knew we had a long way to go to rebuild the trust that had been broken. Still, for the first time in months, I felt like I might eventually get my brother back. Then the wedding will proceed as scheduled, I said, opening the conference room door to signal that our meeting was concluded. Victoria will coordinate with my staff on the final details. As the group filed out, James lingered behind. When we were alone, he turned to me with tears in his eyes. I can't believe I just did that, he said, half laughing, half crying. Did you see their faces? I did, I confirmed, handing him a glass of water. That was quite an exit. I'm going to pay for it financially and socially, he acknowledged. But the moment the minister asked that question, I knew I couldn't go through with it. All I could think about was how Melissa and her mother treated you, how they were willing to exclude you while taking your money. And I realized that if I married her, I would be endorsing that behavior. I would be becoming one of them. What will you do now? I asked. He shrugged, looking suddenly lighter despite the circumstances. Go back to my apartment, return to work, start over. It will be embarrassing for a while, but at least I'll be living authentically. I squeezed his hand. I'm proud of you, James. That took real courage. I learned it from my little sister, he said with a warm smile. The hotel girl who built an empire while staying true to herself. In the following days, James faced the fallout from his decision. The Blakes demanded repayment for their portion of the wedding expenses, which he agreed to handle over time. Some of Melissa's society friends spread unkind rumors about him, but his true friends stood by his side. As for me, I had my brother back, and that was worth more than any business deal or social connection. The Sapphire Grand suffered no lasting damage to its reputation. In fact, Victoria Hayes later told me that my handling of the situation had earned respect in professional circles. Everyone knows the Blakes can be difficult clients, she confided. The fact that you stood your ground while maintaining professionalism has only enhanced your standing. 1 month after the non-wedding, James and I resumed our tradition of Sunday brunches, something we hadn't done since Melissa entered the picture. As we shared pancakes and coffee, he looked more like himself than he had in years. I got a call from Eleanor Blake yesterday, he mentioned casually. She wanted to let me know that Melissa is dating a hedge fund manager now. Apparently, they met at a charity gala 2 weeks after our wedding was supposed to happen. That was fast, I remarked. James laughed. I'm not surprised. I think I was always more of an accessory than a partner to her. The successful contractor with the rugged good looks who could be molded into an acceptable society husband. And now I'm dating someone new too, he admitted with a sheepish smile. Remember Sarah from the city planning office? We always got along when I was submitting permits. She called to check on me after hearing about the wedding, and we ended up talking for hours. Sarah is wonderful, I said sincerely. Smart, kind, and she values you for who you actually are. That makes all the difference. James agreed. She wants to meet you properly, by the way. I told her all about my amazing sister who saved me from making the biggest mistake of my life. I'd love that, I said, feeling a warmth that had nothing to do with the summer sunshine streaming through the window. The wounds caused by Melissa and her family would take time to fully heal. But James and I were rebuilding our bond, stronger and wiser than before. Sometimes it takes nearly losing someone to realize how valuable they truly are. 6 months after the wedding that never was, I sat in my office at the Sapphire Grand, reviewing the quarterly financial reports. The hotel chain was thriving, with bookings at an all-time high and a waiting list for elite catering that stretched into the next year. A knock at the door interrupted my concentration. It was Anthony, my hotel manager, with a strange expression on his face. Melissa Blake is in the lobby, he announced. She's asking to speak with you. I set down my pen in surprise. Melissa? Did she say what this is about? No, but she seems different. Less imperial, if you know what I mean. Curiosity got the better of me. Send her up. When Melissa entered my office, I barely recognized her. Gone was the perfectly coiffed society princess with designer clothes and flawless makeup. This Melissa wore simple jeans, a sweater, and minimal cosmetics. Her hair was pulled back in a casual ponytail. Thank you for seeing me, she said, her voice lacking the entitled edge I remembered. I know this must be unexpected. Please have a seat, I offered, gesturing to the chair across from my desk. What can I do for you? Melissa sat down, folding her hands nervously in her lap. I came to apologize properly this time, not with some lawyer-drafted statement. I raised an eyebrow but remained silent, waiting for her to continue. What I did to you was inexcusable, she admitted. Trying to exclude you from James' wedding while keeping your money was not just rude. It was cruel and potentially criminal. I was so caught up in creating the perfect society wedding that I lost sight of basic human decency. What brought on this revelation? I asked, genuinely curious. She sighed. After James left me at the altar, I was angry and humiliated. I blamed everyone but myself. I quickly started dating Curtis, a hedge fund manager my mother introduced me to, thinking I could just replace James and move on. I heard about that, I acknowledged. Curtis proposed after just 6 weeks, Melissa continued. My mother was thrilled. His family has even more money than we do. But then I overheard him talking to his friends about me. Her voice cracked slightly. He said I was high maintenance but good arm candy for client meetings. He said he could train me to be the perfect corporate wife. That sounds painful, I said, feeling an unexpected twinge of sympathy. It was a wake-up call, she admitted. For the first time, I saw myself through someone else's eyes, and I didn't like what I saw. I broke off the engagement and started therapy. My mother was furious, but my father supported my decision, surprisingly. Howard seemed to have more self-awareness than Eleanor, I observed. Melissa nodded. Dad pulled me aside after the therapy announcement and told me something I'll never forget. He said, "Melissa, I indulged your mother's social climbing because I thought it made her happy, but it turned her into someone I barely recognize, and now it's doing the same to you." Powerful words, I murmured. It has been a difficult few months of self-examination, she continued. I've had to confront some ugly truths about myself and how I treated people, especially you and James. The therapist helped me see that my behavior stemmed from deep insecurity. Despite all the privilege I grew up with, I never felt good enough on my own merits. I studied her closely, looking for signs of manipulation or insincerity. To my surprise, I found none. "I don't expect forgiveness," Melissa said, meeting my gaze directly. "I just wanted you to know that I recognize the harm I caused, and I am working to become a better person." "I appreciate that," I said carefully. "Genuine apologies are rare." "There is one more thing," she added, reaching into her purse. "This is for you." She handed me an envelope. Inside was a cashier's check for $65,000. "Your deposit," she explained. "It should have been returned to you immediately after the wedding was canceled. It was wrong of me to try to keep it." I stared at the check in surprise. "Thank you. This is unexpected." "It is the right thing to do," she said simply, standing to leave. That is all I wanted to say. "Thank you for seeing me." As she turned to go, I found myself asking, "Have you spoken to James?" She paused at the door. "No. I thought about reaching out, but I decided that would be selfish. He seems happy with Sarah from what I've heard. He deserves that happiness without me complicating things." With that, she was gone, leaving me to ponder the strange encounter. People could change, it seemed, if they were willing to face their mistakes honestly. That evening, I met James and Sarah for dinner at my newest hotel property. They were glowing with happiness, clearly well-matched in values and temperament. Sarah was warm, intelligent, and treated the waitstaff with genuine kindness, something I noticed immediately. "You'll never guess who came to see me today," I told James over dessert. When I recounted Melissa's visit and apology, his eyes widened in disbelief. "Melissa Blake admitted she was wrong and returned the money voluntarily? Are you sure it was really her and not an imposter?" I laughed. "It was her, though a very different version from the woman you almost married." James shook his head in wonder. "People can surprise you, I guess, though I'm grateful every day that I didn't go through with the wedding." Sarah squeezed his hand affectionately. "So am I, selfishly. The whole experience taught me something important," I reflected. For years, I defined success by my business achievements. I worked endless hours building the Sapphire brand, sometimes at the expense of personal relationships. I took pride in being self-sufficient, never needing to ask for help. "You've always been the strong one," James agreed. "But strength isn't about handling everything alone," I continued. "Real strength is knowing when to stand up for yourself, when to set boundaries, and when to walk away from situations that diminish your worth. If I hadn't found the courage to confront you and Melissa about the wedding exclusion, I might still be letting people take advantage of my generosity while treating me as less than." "I'm sorry I put you in that position," James said quietly. "We both learned from it," I assured him. "And our relationship is stronger for having weathered that storm." In the months that followed, I made changes in both my personal and professional life. I began volunteering with a mentorship program for young women entrepreneurs, sharing not just business advice, but lessons about self-worth and healthy boundaries. My experiences with Melissa and her family had shown me how many people, especially women, struggle with standing up for themselves in both personal and professional contexts. I also reconnected with old friends I had neglected during my workaholic years, finding joy in relationships that had nothing to do with business advantage. James and I instituted a strict no-work talk policy for our Sunday brunches, focusing instead on our lives, dreams, and the simple pleasure of sibling companionship. Perhaps most surprisingly, I developed a cordial relationship with Howard Blake. After Melissa's apology, he reached out to discuss a potential business collaboration. Over lunch, he confided that my handling of the wedding situation had earned his respect. "I built my car dealership empire by recognizing talent and integrity," he told me. "You demonstrated both. Eleanor and Melissa may have wealth and social connections, but you have something more valuable, character." The $65,000 check from Melissa went into a special fund I created to help couples who wanted meaningful weddings without financial strain. The True Love, True Values grant provided venue and catering services at the Sapphire Grand for couples who demonstrated authentic commitment to each other and their communities. As for my brother, he and Sarah became engaged a year after the non-wedding disaster. They planned a simple ceremony in the garden of my newest hotel property, with only close friends and family in attendance. When James asked me to be his best woman, I accepted with tears of joy. On the morning of his wedding, as I helped him straighten his tie, James looked at me with gratitude in his eyes. "You saved me from making the biggest mistake of my life," he said. "Not just by stopping the wedding with Melissa, but by reminding me of who I really am and what actually matters." "That's what family does," I replied, echoing the words I had spoken during our confrontation a year earlier. "The real kind, not the kind that only values status and appearances." The lesson I learned through that painful experience was profound. True self-worth comes not from what you accomplish or who accepts you, but from honoring your own values and refusing to compromise them for approval or advantage. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself and others is to say no when someone tries to diminish your worth. The path to healing began with that difficult stand, continued through rebuilding authentic connections, and led to a life richer in meaning than I could have imagined. By refusing to accept disrespect, I had not only preserved my dignity but helped others, including Melissa, confront important truths about themselves. Life offers many tests of character. The wedding that never happened became one of mine, revealing strengths I didn't know I possessed and values I would never again compromise. In standing up for myself, I discovered that self-respect is the foundation upon which all meaningful relationships must be built. You cannot control how others treat you, but you always have the power to decide what treatment you will accept. Sometimes saying no is the first step towards saying yes to the life you truly deserve. Have you ever had to stand up for yourself when someone tried to take advantage of your generosity? Share your story in the comments below. And if this resonated with you, please hit the like button, subscribe to hear more life lessons, and share with someone who might need this reminder of their own worth. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, your value is not determined by those who fail to see it. ***.